Good evening, everybody, on a Tuesday night, the 31st of October, episode 113, weirdly enough, on Halloween. Who would have thought? So what's been happening? So tonight we welcome Melbourne-based artist with incredible talent, Justine McAllister. So we'll have a chat to her shortly. Thanks to Eddie Zammit for hooking this up for me. I've met Justine before at a few galleries. But it's nice to connect the blocks, and Eddie's been kind enough to connect us together to get a show and chat about her art career and in general, in life in general. So just before we do, we're going to touch on a couple of music gigs that are coming up. We interviewed the other day Jessica Lux, who's got a show to Thursday night at the Merry Creek Tavern. That will round off, we'll start off your November. Also off to George Lane with Mick Daly's Corporate Raiders and Penny Eichinger. Make sure you check that one out. Hit the road then and off to Archie's Creek for a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers tribute with a few superstars there, Rebecca Barnard, Charles Jenkins, Nick Barker and Rob Craw. There's a few road trips for that one, 3rd, 4th and 5th of November. And then back for Jessica Lux at George Lane in St Kilda. Make sure you check that one out. Archie's Creek's going to be a massive one on Saturday night for a band called Sweet Talk, who are getting big. So make sure you check them out. And UMI, Melbourne's own UMI. So with friends of ours on the show, Davey Lane and Tim Rogers. So make sure you check that out up at Archie's Creek. And then into the 4th to the 7th of November, we've got the Retreat Hotel's having a big festival, so make sure you check out some great gigs there with some local acts for sure. Another friends of the show, Cold Irons Bound, they've got a gig on the Sunday, the 5th of November. And just to round out the start of the week for next week, US artist who's going to be coming on the show in the next few weeks has got a new show, Jenny Don't and the Spurs. That's at Shot Kickers, but there's also a couple of other gigs coming up, the Old Bar as well. So make sure you check that one out. And the last one to round out is 7 Ups. They're releasing a new single. This will be at the Nightcat on Monday. So if that doesn't round off your Cup weekend, you've gone to the wrong place, because I guarantee you'll text me back and you'll have loved one of those gigs. And to just a quick last minute shout out to Luli Palooza, which is part of the Luli Tavern. Big festival that's on in a couple of weeks' time on the 11th of November. Make sure you check that out with a few friends of the show as well. So there you go. That's what you're going to do for the week or weekend. Most importantly, stay safe out there. Halloween's on tonight. Go to bed early. The kids have absolutely raided anything to do with the chocolate that was around my place, that's for sure. They took it early, so luckily the kids were out nice and early. So, and then make sure you round out the rest of the week, going to see some music. But tonight we're talking art, we've had a couple of artists on, which has been fantastic. Keegan Hall from the States, who is a pencil drawing artist and he's drawn some of the most iconic art pieces in the world and raised a hell of a lot of money for charity. So he's been incredible. And the other one is Danielle Weber. We've also had on as well. So that was a great chat too. So this kicks off a bit of an art series that we're going to have over time, connecting with some artists as we touch on music and art, and they all kind of tie in together at some point, no doubt. So it's fantastic to be able to bring on for episode 113, Justine McAllister. So here we go. Welcome, Justine.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
It's a Tuesday night, 31st of October. What else would you be doing on a quiet Tuesday night?
Drawing. Yep. You eat and then you keep drawing and then think about work right up to probably a couple of seconds before you go to bed. So that's probably a normal Tuesday night.
It's early in the week. Is it an action-packed week for you at the moment, or is it a planning and a planning week, I guess?
It's all digital design, trying to get on top of admin, not on a wall this week, but it's prepping for them and sorting out logistics. So hectic, but in different ways.
Yeah, I think the challenge of obviously being an artist as well is someone's got to do the back end work and make sure the bills are getting paid, and the money's coming in. It's not all fun and dirty hands and paint. There's another side to it, and gladly enough, now that you're growing very rapidly as an artist, that has its challenges as well, no doubt.
It does. Like, the bigger projects, bigger problems, and more at stake. So it's always want to grow, but you always are faced with equal challenges the more you level up.
Yeah, I bet. All right, we're going to touch back to one of your first memories of art that you look back on now as an adult. What kind of do you remember as a kid? What was it for you? What gripped you at some point?
I think I just started drawing really, really early, and I think either my mom or my nan told me I was good at it, and it makes you feel good, big compliment, and you go, I'm going to keep doing this, and they get put on the fridge, you get more compliments. But not only that, I really enjoyed the process, and I think quite at an early age that sort of solidified my identity, that I'm, somewhat artistic or a maker. And I don't know, I was just always making things. Like, Dad was a TV repairman growing up, and get a box from his shop, and I'd make a horse stables for my plastic horses in it, and always making dresses for my Barbies and then drawing it. So it was just always this sort of spiral of creativity and making things, and like being banished to my room, not that I was, but was just my idea of joy kind of thing. I wasn't very outdoorsy growing up. It was always being in my bedroom making, always on the floor, still make on the floor cross-legged, still draw on the floor cross-legged, probably not the best as I'm getting a bit older, but I think it was just that. And then I never really stopped. I think it wasn't until about of high school that a couple of very supportive teachers told me I was too smart to be an artist, or it wasn't a smart career move, or what was I thinking? And then I think that was the first seeds of doubt of, like, oh, should I not do this forever? Or, maybe I won't be able to make money, or should I be stopping this, or is this childlike or silly? Because not a lot of my friends were creating as well. But I still think about my high school art teacher, who was quite favourable of me, to be quite honest. But I thought I wanted to do fashion design in year 12. And I was talking to him about it, and he goes, what did you do all summer? And this was the summer between year 11 and year 12. And I said, I did like 50 paintings or something. He goes, have you thought about being an artist for a career? And I was like, oh, it's actually the creating, the drawing, the painting of the process of anything is what I love. So I kind of went with that and ran with it.
Yep. Have you ever kept any of those old paintings that you did as a youngster and ever looked back on them? And what's your advice to that little young child right now?
Yeah, a few of them are still on mum and dad's walls, to be quite honest, and they're all full. Nice. Yes. Yep. But yeah, I think my advice to myself then would have even been like, create more, like ignore the self-doubt, ignore the perfectionism, the expectations, ignore art trends. I think a lot of people are quite unaware of teachers or mentors' art trends and where they try and skew you, and like just have a heavy influence on what you should be making and how you should be making it. I think just stick to your guns. My artwork has always been the most successful when I've just done my own thing. Like, I went to university to study fine art painting, and it wasn't until I went rogue and ignored most of the lecturers' advice that the university bought one of my works. So I think, yeah, I'm quite suggestive, and I think sometimes when people suggest things to me or try and influence, I like try to keep an open mind and learn new things, but I've got to remember, what do I like doing? What kind of work do I want to see in the world, and what processes do I enjoy doing? So that's something I think I would try and tell my younger self or younger artists, is just keep checking in with yourself and make sure the process and the concepts are authentic to what you want to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's unbelievable advice, because it's very easy just to try and take the work that's there, but not necessarily, it might pay the bills, but there's no enjoyment factor, which probably leads to the lack of longevity potentially as an artist.
absolutely. I like myself, like so many of my peers, I've done horrendous jobs for cash. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
with those jobs, you just go, it's a means to an end and make the client happy. But yeah, I've done some corkers of jobs. Yeah, they're not earlier on. They're not all fun and games.
Yeah. Well, in your words, I'll call this a corker for a good reason, though. This job was a few years ago now. I think we're going back to 2017. So we're going a little bit back in time. But you got a chance to express yourself on a large scale, maybe for one of the first times. But in this case, incredible story and amazing content. So this goes for a couple of minutes. So I really want to just show this video and then we're going to talk through it. But this is when we highlighted just before that this is when Justine just started to turn the corner a little bit and realize, yeah, this big kind of big scale artwork maybe is for you. Here we go.
I'm Justine McAllister. I am an illustrator and muralist. I moved here from Ballarat when I was 18, studied fine art painting. From there, I fell in love with murals and a bit more site-specific artwork, painting on anything that's not a traditional canvas. The process for my artwork, I went to 10 tram stops that played a significant part of my Melbourne history and selected 10 travellers that used the same stops and asked if I could illustrate them. The idea behind it being that we're all different people with different days, with different backgrounds, but we all share the same network. I gathered all the photos together and started sketching the faces and then came up with a concept. I'm really excited to see my tram. I haven't had something on a large object like this. To have my artwork on such an iconic Melbourne object is really exciting. Oh my God, it's really big. It's so cool. Just what I hoped. I put sort of big, bold motion lines to show a bit of movement, like the tram going by. And I've also cropped the faces to suggest that, you know, we're all on the same network, but you just get a glimpse of these strangers, you only get this little snapshot. I want the diversity and sense of community to come through. I want people to sort of maybe look around them in the tram and take notice of the diversity in Melbourne and appreciate that. And I also wanted to do something that was super bold and bright, sort of a ray of sunshine to run through the city.
What an incredible project. Not only is it a great story behind it, but so well executed. And I think there probably is no, let's face it, there probably is no more iconic thing than the Melbourne tram, realistically, other than Flinders Street Station, but possibly. But as far as a moving, iconic space that is mobile art, effectively, I mean, what better than Melbourne's tram? You really nailed this one. Just tell us a little bit about this project. Obviously, we've heard a little bit about how it kind of came together and the influences, but how did that really start to change you as an artist from that point?
Yeah, that job was a real win. I remember how I got it. I don't think I'd put in any expression of interests before, and that is quite a big part of my income, my career ever since. But I'm pretty sure it was my first one. And it was suggested to me, you know, just put it in. And I was like, there's no way I'll get it, you know, but put something in, give it a really good crack, and I got it. And I got these expression of interest are so easy, which is not the case. I was just super lucky at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a project. Before then I was painting a lot of cafes or quite what I would call very small murals back then. But I think it was that people started to go, oh, how'd she get that? Or it just, you know, it got me a little bit more noticed. And I definitely got a lot of job inquiries because of that. And, you know, the family came down and saw the tram, and like when that was up and running, all of my mates and my husband's mates every 2 seconds were like selfie of them with the tram or on the tram. And they're always terrible. It'd be the selfie and the tram would be in like the last fifth of it when they're scrambling to get their phones out. But it was just it was a really good experience. And actually, I haven't watched that video for years, so it was really nice to see, and still proud of it. But you have come a long way as well.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see.
As you should be. Absolutely, you should be proud. It's probably more relevant right now than it's ever been, as far as highlighting Melbourne's diverse culture and community, and the transport network. The way you put together and identified, I think you mentioned 10 people, was it?
Yeah, 5 on each side.
Yeah, just to have that thought. I mean, how did you come up with that idea?
I wanted to showcase, I can't remember if there was a prompt that year to showcase the community members of Melbourne, but I remember just thinking it's a really nice story to go to a tram stop that has a connection to myself. Like, for instance, one in Richmond, find someone about to jump on the tram and take their photo. And it is really hard to take strangers' photos. Like, so many people so self-conscious, or crazy girl with a clipboard running up going, this is an art thing. You could have your face really big on a tram. So that's how I did it. I selected 10 stops and found 10 willing strangers. And after a while you're like, I've got too many, blonde women. I need to find someone else, trying to get a good snapshot of Melbourne's community, but people willing to be photographed and be part of the project. So I was quite bold back then to be doing that. And I think I'd be self-conscious running around asking that, but I guess hungry artists will make you do things, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. You never lose that sense of fear, I guess, in no matter what the project is. And now you've gone on to bigger and better projects, larger scale, grand scale, up in cherry pickers, on the tops of buildings, all sorts of things. But one thing, we'll touch on a few of those shortly, but one thing that really kind of touched home with me, and I've seen a few friends and artists do band posters and stuff recently and over the last few years, but to do one of my favorite bands possibly ever, what a moment. I hope you're a fan, Justine, but Pearl Jam, this was a one for Texas that was used this year. So has this show has been, hasn't it, in September?
It has, yeah, it was September. What a thrill to do this, really. I think, look, to be quite honest, how they got in contact with me and why they got in contact with me, still a little hazy, but I think it is because of some previous posters that I've done. May have been my He-Man posters that I did not long ago. But to be quite honest, I didn't ask them why. I just said yes immediately, and off we went. But for a company called T-Cert, they look after Pearl Jam's posters and merch, asked me to do it, and they gave me an incredible amount of trust and creative freedom with this, which was amazing. I wouldn't have thought something for such an iconic band that would just let me go, but the whole point of it is to get artists' art on these posters. So it's really fabulous to be allowed that freedom. I wasn't massively into Pearl Jam, but my cousins were. Probably a tiny bit young for Pearl Jam in their heyday. But I do remember my cousins or my neighbours having these enormous Pearl Jam posters, the really, really big ones plastered all over their bedrooms. And it's funny, they've all come out of the woodwork and go, I used to have a Pearl Jam poster. And I go, I remember that. And that was quite nice uniting with some of them again. And can't say too much, but there will be more band posters soon. So.
Fantastic. All right. That's awesome to hear. That's ironically, that's two artists that we've had on the show that have both done work for Pearl Jam. Keegan Hall, who we had on earlier, I think it was probably 60 or 70 odd shows ago now. So we must touch base with Keegan again, but he did a pencil sketch of Eddie Vedder, and they raised a hell of a lot of money for charity. And Eddie kept the original, which was really cool. And they both signed prints, limited edition prints. And so was that a similar kind of thing for the Pearl Jam thing for you? How did it kind of work? What does, other than hopefully a financial contribution, what else does the artist really get out of doing something for such a large band other than exposure and money, a little bit of money?
Yeah, well, I guess, it's the money, it's the reach. One of the nicest things that came out of the project, there was a lot of female and queer Pearl Jam fans message something a bit different for Pearl Jam. There aren't tons of women artists that illustrate for band posters in general, let alone Pearl Jam. So just having those messages saying, hell yeah, another female doing a piece of work's really nice with a bit of a different point of view. And actually, that was one of the greatest things out of it, just to create something for iconic band that has a new reach or caters for maybe a different demographic within their fan base. So, I mean, I was really chuffed with that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely feedback you probably weren't expecting, for sure.
Yeah.
But to get kind of inboxes in one morning, obviously, as you wake up from the other side of the world, with exposure from another reach and audience, I think that's really cool.
And one thing I learned about Pearl Jams, they are very, very passionate fans. Oh my goodness.
They sure
I've been
are.
to every show this year with all of the merch and waited for hours, buying absolutely everything. I've got this, that, and they were telling us about that. And I diehard fans that I didn't know existed. So it was cool to see.
Well, there you go. And a little bit of warning for the future that there is more music on the horizon for Justine McAllister. So look out. Hopefully another big international act. But anyway, we'll save that one for a future episode when it happens.
That's good.
All right, we need to touch on scale now. And I think this is one you've incredibly been able to nail. One thing I really resonate or love about your work is your use of color. Gives it a real dimension. I think that some artists can get really lost in the color mix. How hard is the color choice process for you?
It's generally something that comes pretty easy to me. It's I don't know. I think before I do a design, the color is quite set, or color combinations are quite set in my head, and that's a leading principle even sometimes before the figurative elements come into it. Sometimes client has color direction, which obviously you have to follow. I try and inject as much yellow into everything as possible. I don't know why, everything just always seems to come back to yellow. I think as well, like one of my really simple formulas, I've always gravitated to primary color palettes, your red, yellow, blues. And then within those palettes, I might tweak the blue to come down to a green, or I might desaturate the yellow and I might hike up the saturation with the red. But generally having a primary palette to springboard off, and then pulling and pushing the hues, the saturation of all of those inside, like in some kind of way, seems to create the most harmonious color palettes for me. That's just how, and then just a whole lot of tweaking goes on after that. But yeah, I think color's so important. And I've got a like photos and a sketchbook of color palettes that I want to try. I'll often see them in vintage fabrics, or someone will be amazing wearing an amazing suit or outfit, or in some architecture, and I was like, oh, magenta and mauve, like just put that in here until the next wall comes up, see if that's appropriate for them. So yeah, color's never really a struggle.
Yeah, well, you do it so well, and this one, not only the yellow background, yellows and mustards through the background, but those little pops of red just dances the eyes all the time. You're looking at these red horses everywhere. So then we talk about scale. I mean, you don't really appreciate it from this shot how big a mural potentially is, but definitely, I know you're not incredibly tall, Justine, but that's irrelevant. This is a big mural.
It's relevant as in it's annoying because you've got a tiny wingspan. You're working with someone on a lift that's a lot taller than you. You're always done a lot sooner than they are, which is it's really. But when you get this big, no one's this tall, of course. I think it's like every mural artist. You start painting walls, and if you enjoy doing murals, you just want to go bigger and bigger. It's just something that seems to be innate in muralists. It's a challenge. It's the next drive, just, I don't know. It's just a real scale is something I think you can get quite addicted to as well. So, and this project you can't see as well has got another return wall in it again, which is, it's kind of a quadrangle that's really difficult to photograph, and it's shy of 70 horses. There's, I think, 68, 69 69 bits of horses in these. So for 4 weeks, I was just, you know, putting on clean paint pants and going to work and painting another few horses. So it's just a big blur of horse and rain with this project. But it was a really great one. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And here's a shot of a little bit of close-up kind of detail as it was kind of coming together. I suppose the question I have to ask is, where do you even start with a mural this kind of size? Is it an entire background that you paint in, or do you start in sections?
Every job's different. It's generally an access issue. So with this project, there are a few within this area. This is the Pullman Hotel, the car park to the hotel, and I had to navigate around a bunch of tradesmen. So there was, on one side of this, there was a whole lot of cars, and I had to start like at one end, and then the cars were up the other area, so I had to do a patch of another area, and then they sort of, it kind of knitted together. Like, if I had my way, I would do it quite systematically, like chunk by chunk, but it's never that way. I did a project of a portrait years ago, and I was so looking forward to it, and the scaffold didn't come, so I had to spend a week on an ear, and how boring that was. I wanted to get into the face and the foliage of it, and it was just the most rendered ear I think that's ever been painted. So you've got to learn to be flexible. You've got to just paint wherever you can get access to and keep going. And if you're working with assistants as well on large projects, they often don't do exactly what you do. I always want to make the finishing touches or my mark to be something that I do. So if I've got assistants, the background's theirs to go free reign on. So every project's different. I feel I, assess the wall and try and come up with a plan, and that's shot to shit often, but
Absolutely.
be flexible.
Yeah, and then you've got the factor that you can't control ever is weather. And that not only does that kind of potentially derail the whole timeline of your project, but it affects drying times, all sorts of things. So that must be the big unknown factor, I think, but probably one of the exciting parts of the kill as well, to try and get a project done before it starts to rain sometimes.
Yeah, can I plug a really good rain app called Rain Parrot?
Absolutely.
It's the most accurate rain detector for any artists out there. You can set it to, if there's 1 mil coming in, it'll say like 5 mil of rain will come in northwesterly in 5 minutes. And I've got alerts on my phone, so I don't have to keep checking my phone every 2 seconds. Yep. It actually screams Rain Parrot when it's about to rain, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Wow.
But that has saved the day. And early in my career, there's been a couple of flash floods, and I've had dark blue paint drip down 10 meters, or I was unaware of how condensation overnight during the colder months, you think finish by 4 o'clock, it's dry, acrylic paint's got half an hour to dry, and it just doesn't set, a lot of moisture in the air, and you come back and your painting's crying. So I think most artists don't learn that the hard way, that you are dictated to the weather, and explaining that to the client is really important, that it's the one thing that's out of our hands. You can watch the weather, but what are the contingency plans for that? Yeah.
And types of paint for you, while we're touching on the murals, is it a water-based acrylic in these instances and all the time, or is it's never ever water-based enamels and things as well?
No, not really. It's the way I paint, and no, I'm pretty loyal to Resine as well, the paint brand. That are here. The colours super vibrant. Most mural artists have transitioned to Resine nowadays. They just dry really well, super highly pigmented. Other paint brands, especially for yellows, will take 5 sometimes. Like you paint cordial on a wall, but Resine will get away with 2. So as soon as I've had assistants who are mural artists, and you're like, try this, and they just fall in love with it immediately. So George Rose got me onto Resine and haven't really looked back.
Yeah, right. Well, no doubt time's money, and you don't have time for 6 coats of any paint. So that's for sure.
Absolutely. Sometimes when my sister's been assisting me, I'm like, oh, it's like really transparent. So I've made her do that. I've made her do the horrible colours. And
Bit of sister pain there for sure.
absolutely.
All right, let's touch on this mural. Tell me a little bit about this. It looks to me like it's a vinyl transfer, or
Yeah.
digital printed. Yeah. Where was this, and obviously, how did this project come together?
This one is in Brisbane. The actual specific location of it, I never saw it in person. So this was for Authority Creative, which I've done several projects with them. Really amazing to work with. It was a season of sunshine theme with all local flora and fauna. So I do a bit of print work as well when budgets and painting isn't possible. I do actually really like the mix of doing a bit of print and paint work. I'm sure most people know painting, physical painting is quite exhausting and not always possible. So to have this option, and where it's often removable as well. So it's great to be able to have another medium where you can put your artwork in places. But I really enjoyed it and spent a week in my pajamas painting.
Yeah.
So digitally painting birds and flowers. It was really lovely.
Yeah. How hard is it from a travel component? Obviously, if you're based in Melbourne, the logistics to try and make it happen interstate.
I like to travel a lot when I can. I know a lot of artists have got families now or different setups where it may be not so easy for people to travel, but most mural artists, I think, really enjoy traveling, and it's on the bucket list next year as well to paint all over Australia a bit more and also abroad. I've got some ideas of painting abroad. So awesome. Yeah, I definitely, before I get a bit older, to do some walls elsewhere is pretty exciting.
Yeah, look out. All right. Well, there's nothing better than transforming a blank wall that comes together, from such big space, which, let's face it, it's just a big blank wall without this incredible mural on it. What's the challenge, I guess, probably what I'm asking, with, a client that comes to you with a brief that you find as a challenge yourself as an artist to try and execute, but you still got to try and come back with a concept, and then you obviously with a vision that you've got to nail it, and it's got to be that size. How hard is that as an artist, or is it kind of down to experience as you get more and more done, that you just be able to get them done quicker and nail the briefs more on point, I guess?
The brief design concept stage always the most difficult. It's the unknown. It's meeting expectation and knowing if you're the right fit for the project. So once the design is signed off, ready to go, I really don't have to think. I just turn into a bit of a tradie and you knock up a wall. Other than weather, it's quite meditative. You get the job done. But working with clients, it is experience and knowing what to ask as well, and trying to be a couple of steps ahead so you can fulfill their vision. I think one really good question to ask clients is, of my previous work, what do you like, or why have you selected me? Earlier on in my career, I've been selected to do a job just because they didn't know anyone else. And you're like, okay, good. Do you know what I mean? Or I have been selected for a job just because I'm female. That's just the reality of some projects. But I think trying to get them to say, I really like this project of yours. I love the colours and the composition. So I think even bouncing off that's a really good way to start a design. But it's asking lots and lots of questions. And I think the hardest thing for me to understand is not everyone can visualize the way artists can. I'm very against this idea that artists have this innate talent sprung out of the womb. We know how to paint. It's lots and lots of hard work and development. But one thing I do think that might be a bit more that artists have or some artists have, that I think that not all of our clients have. So trying to convey your idea to them through designs, through swatches, through reference material, as much as that, I think that you're going to meet a common ground. And I'm very, not everyone does this, and I'm a bit of a masochist, but I do full color illustrations, fully rendered, of every wall I do.
Yeah, right.
It's 50% for the client to be so super satisfied that they know the scale and the content of their walls, and I'll Photoshop it onto a photograph of their wall so they know exactly what they're getting. But it's also for me, so I don't have to make any decisions on the wall. I just rock up and do it. So it's just planning. You know, I know some artists work, you know, rock up with a bucket of paint and what they go, but for commercial projects, I don't think that's very viable.
Yeah, it's like we talked about, the classic time's money, and you don't have time when you set up and you're on site and you've got a deadline. You've got to make it happen, and it's got to be in that time frame, or else it's more than likely back on you to get it done regardless.
A lot of mural projects are set fee. It's a negotiated project fee. So if you're over, that's on you. So it's a great way to work, and I think it's a great way for everyone to set up expectation at the start. But, you know, you do have to try and negotiate time pretty well.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to flash across to a gallery I saw some of your work at KSR. That sadly, that gallery is no longer with us anymore. But what an amazing time to be involved at KSR with the freedom to do this incredible project. Just tell us a little bit about how this project came together, and most importantly, this incredible piece. How did the KSR thing come about, obviously as an artist, and then what do you get as far as free reign to kind of do whatever you want inside a gallery space for a certain period of time?
So it was an application presentation approach to the gallery with your idea and concept. So I knew I wanted it to be called Lions, Tigers and Bears post-COVID, and I was very adamant about that. I knew I wanted the walls to be maroon, and then everything else was worked out in the space. So it was a 5-week residency, I think it ended up by being, and all of the work that you saw in the pictures were made in the space in 6 weeks, which is, I don't know how I did it looking back, to be quite honest. It was a very intense amount of work to do. I think it was 13 paintings, a mural, a hanging installation. I did jewelry and prints as well. So it was a lot, as well as transforming the space, the walls of the gallery itself. But to be able to have an opportunity just to make whatever you want to make, coming from a very commercial mural practice, was just a dream, and also extremely daunting as well. I think when you're very used to doing commercial projects, you go, okay, what do I want to do? What do I like? What are my favorite colors? Because everything is always bounced off or collaborated with someone else. When it's all on you, you can't blame a dodgy color or composition on your client. Everything's on you. So it was wonderful, though. It was a really, really good experience. And from that as well, one of the key ideas from doing personal work is to hopefully that'll bleed into more and more mural works. So people will see, I loved your painting, could we turn that into a mural? And I have got a few mural scents of tigers. So people are like, who does tigers? Justine does tigers. Let's get her on. But
the tiger girl, yeah,
exactly. I mean, I'm not sorry about that at all. But
yeah,
it is to influence clients and future projects.
Yeah. So just tell me a little bit about that concept for you. Why tigers? Why lions? How did that all come together? Is it a love for you that you've always resonated with those kind of animals, or what? Why the theme for you?
Have you seen Wizard of Oz?
I have.
Yes. So one of the most famous quotes from Wizard of Oz is lions and tigers and bears, and it's the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Dorothy going into the forest, and they're chanting lions and tigers and bears, and they're just catastrophizing. They're working themselves up, the anxiety, and they get confronted with the lion, who turns out to be super cowardly. So the show is a metaphor. I
Yeah.
love painting animals, so that was a massive plus. But I think coming out of COVID, everyone around me, including myself, had anxiety about everything. And I think there was a lot of very legitimate anxiety, you know, jobs, money, income,
Yep.
relationships, everything. And also, I think a lot of us, when you're locked in a room, locked in a house, you start concocting problems that maybe you don't have when you have your normal busy life. So it was a play on just the anxiety that was around us. And instead of being quite literal with something quite serious, I like to put a playful spin on it and quite a metaphoric spin of animals and people all in these big chaotic tangles. But the paintings themselves were never meant to be gruesome or grotesque. Every painting was just the moment before, like the lion was about to attack the horse, or
Right.
was about to get. So it was about that moment before anything bad ever happened. So my pictorial, very theatrical spin on the anxiety that we all felt a couple of years ago.
Do you ever look back on that now and use that as kind of motivation every time you have a little bit of that anxiety and the build up and you think, this is when I nailed that project and this is what it was about and this is what I stand for now?
The work kind of changes. It's weird. I think maybe I look back at it and it has like slightly different and more refreshed meanings from wherever I am. And I think art does that when you revisit the same piece of art, how you're feeling at that point of time. You'll read the piece of work with a different context. But it being so engrossed in the body of work at the time, I finished it and I didn't really know how I felt about it, to be quite honest. I was so in it. But after having a bit of separation from it, I'm really proud of that body of work. And it was something very personal, and I took a lot of risks with that work, which I don't always get to do with my commercial work. I learnt a lot of things from doing a first solo show as well. Did a lot of things right, did a lot of things wrong, but I just say, you know, I'm really proud of the work and the sales were really good from it. So I'm planning solo show number 2 next year. So that's all of the details for that are being worked out, but really excited about that.
Okay, great. And was that probably obviously your first solo show, but did you feel like you bit off more than you could chew potentially at one stage, or was it always well planned as far as the time frame, what you think you could execute, what style of pieces? I mean, the jewelry, the whole lot. It was a big deal.
I'm a masochist. I made like an embroidered jacket as well for opening night, which I was ironing on there were embroidered patches that mimic the paintings, and I was ironing those on with like 2 hours sleep that morning. I thought I was really organized, but I think a part of my whole career is just, you know, shoot for the stars, make it work. To be quite honest, I bit off way more than I could chew, but I think sometimes, you know, the pressure cooker thing is a good thing, and I'm always proud when I push myself. It's when I'm safe that I don't feel as great about myself. So you know, there's a happy medium. You don't want to completely do something that's unachievable or not going to happen, but I'm a pretty big believer in pushing myself.
And how many pieces were part of that show in particular?
There were 13 paintings, 1 installation, 4 jewelry pieces, and 3 prints, and a jacket.
Were you left with anything at the end?
I think I've got 1 painting left. So they took a few weeks to sell, but I was really pleased with the result.
And given that it was your first solo show with huge success and a real driving force probably for you for the future, do you think you'll keep that last painting maybe as a piece of history for you?
Yeah, I think I might. It's bubble wrapped in my shed with a few things leaning on at the moment, so I should get it out. I love it. It always makes me laugh, you know, when you do a piece of work and you got a coffee cup and a sandwich and you're dragging it around a gallery, and as soon as you give it to someone, they got the white gloves, and you know, like it's you know, it's like an artifact, you know, and I would be with someone else's work as well, but it's just that the difference in the handling of the work. So yeah, I feel like I'm equivalent. I've got a sandwich of it in the garage at the moment.
Or you have to promise me that you drag that back out in the next near future and hang that in your home, because it's too good to be in a back shed wrapped in bubble wrap. So with such a great story behind it, for sure.
Awesome.
What do you think your biggest learning from that festival, or sorry, that gallery in particular? What was your kind of biggest takeaway of what you've learned from that one?
I got a little bit wrapped up in the bells and whistles of the show, as in the jewelry and the wall color had to be perfect and all of the other things. I think it's quite a expectation nowadays that gallery shows are more of an experience rather than paintings just in a white wall gallery.
Yeah.
KSR itself lends itself to a sculptural piece in the middle, so that was something that quite a few people did to create a whole immersive experience. And I'm really proud of all of the elements I did, but I wish I maybe would have focused on the paintings a little bit longer, or maybe done some more paintings to flesh out the body of work. So next time, I think a bit more emphasis on the paintings and maybe make more than what I need, and then I can edit and select from that, because I painted 13 paintings and I put 13 paintings in. So I think, more time on the paintings next time.
Yeah. And why, can I ask you why in particular did the jewelry become part of it? And then there's the sculpture component. Obviously you wanted to tie in the sculpture component because that central focus in that room probably really commanded something big and kind of like a live 3D painting, really. But why the jewelry as well? Is it something that's another love of yours that you've tied in?
It's just a bucket list thing that
Right.
that I wanted to get off, and I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity to do it. It is really cool though. I sold a few pieces and they will pop up. I will be at an event and someone will come with the ring, and I did a lions, tigers and bears motif with Roman numerals of the gear around it. So it was kind of a timestamp timepiece for the show.
Yeah.
Funny story, my sister was on a dating app and one of the guys had another guy's hand around him and the friend had one of my rings on it, and she goes, I think this dude's friend bought your ring. And I go, oh my god, it's my ring. So they've actually been popping up in really weird places. So that's been cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Just on that, I mean, what's the best feedback you've ever had in relation to one of your prints or murals? Or you touched on the Pearl Jam one before, and I thought that was really cool kind of feedback there. But did you have anything else that you just thought, wow, that this kind of really did make a difference, or it was a bit of a moment for someone?
I think the biggest compliment anyone can give is purchasing one of your personal pieces. It's just, it's not even words. It's the act of, I've resonated with something you put out there and I'm willing to pay quite a bit of money for this piece and hang it on my wall as well. I don't think there could be a greater compliment than that. And I know, like myself, a lot of people love artwork, but for them to actually purchase a piece is quite a big deal. So, you know, it is lovely, you know, do murals, and part of the job is that people do say lovely things, or, you know, you activate or change spaces. But I think I get really super chuffed when people will purchase a personal piece I've done. It just feels like a bit more of a personal connection or something. Something more personal about that. Yeah,
for sure. You're 100% right. I mean, that's kind of why you can run some limited edition prints that are replicas, obviously, of the absolute mural. That mural generally is a one-off, or the painting. Someone lucky enough gets to keep that or buy that piece. Have you ever found any of your pieces kind of been sold on to anyone else? Moved houses?
Not that I know of. I guess that was my first show, so no one's flipped a painting yet that I know. Cool. There's the whole politics around that and the ethics of reselling things, but that hasn't happened yet. No.
Yeah, cool. But you're right. I mean, people do have limited space, limited walls. I can understand how you'd be really touched by someone. Have you ever walked into someone's house not knowing that they'd bought one of your pieces and seen it on the wall? Has that happened yet?
It was more that I'd forgotten that they'd purchased. I went to barbecue for grand final day, and my husband's friends had bought a print, and it's like front and center in their living room, and I'd forgotten that they had purchased it, and I'd also forgotten how big it was as well.
Right.
Works in gallery spaces look so much smaller than in, when you put them in domestic environments. But just walking in and it was there, and it was just one of the prints. I really chuffed, because when friends buy your things, you think, oh, they might be just supporting, or they may not get it framed or whack it out the back. But for them to actually go to the trouble of beautifully framing it and putting it in a really central part of their house, it was really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you to that friend for not making it a bubble wrap piece pushed back
Absolutely.
in the corner of the garage, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's seen the light of day, and someone, I'm sure, talks positive about you every time they see that piece, or someone says, wow, that's really cool. They get to tell them a little bit more about the artist. So I think that's really cool too. And even know the artist is even more cool. So well done. I want to touch on the last kind of one I've got for you. This was a really cool piece, and I think it was so well captured, of Daniel Johns for the Past, Present and Future Never exhibition. It was done, curated by Eddie Zammit, who happens to represent you at the moment. This was a beautiful piece. Once again, use of colour, the fine detail also that's in this piece. Just tell us a bit about why this concept for you. How did it come about? Obviously, the Daniel Johns story is widely publicized, I guess, but also there's so many hidden pieces to Daniel Johns and his story. So why this piece for you?
So this exhibition, as you said, was put on by curated by Eddie Zammit, and he curated a select few artists to do works either of Daniel or works that were influenced by his work and his music. But I knew I wanted to do a portrait, and like anything I do, it's generally pretty loud and chaotic, and I put butterflies and scorpions throughout his suit and in the background. This is actually a crop of the original. They're reflections of he's got butterfly and scorpion tattoos, so I just thought they were great motifs to surround him by. And Daniel had a period where he was wearing a lot of eye makeup, and I just gravitated to that. I thought it was pretty cool, and I pieced this image together of different portraits of him in different with different moods, and using all of these references, this is kind of what I came up with. And unlike Pearl Jam, actually was a really big Silverchair fan. I was probably more of their age group growing up. I had all of the albums and was pretty big fan, so this was pretty cool experience to be part of.
Absolutely. You mentioned you weren't necessarily the biggest Pearl Jam fan before that came about, but you are now, right?
No.
But in this case, how cool is that to do something for an artist that you've kind of grown up with as such, and probably idolized? Possibly we had a poster of Daniel and Silverchair even on the wall back as a kid.
Smash hits. There would have been smash hits.
Yes. Yeah.
My next door neighbor was very like NSYNC, very the Pretty Boys, Hanson, and I was grunge all the way. I was Nirvana, Silverchair. So we would share the posters. She could get all the Pretty Boys, and I would have all of the grunge bands posters.
Yeah, really cool. Now you touched on traveling is in your agenda for sure. Hopefully next year, maybe a little bit around Australia, but also in other parts of the world. If you could go and paint one wall you've seen a picture of, or an iconic venue, have you got one for me? Where would it be? Put a dream out there.
I was about to cut you off 10 times because I know the answer to that. Tokyo. So many people are traveling to Japan at the moment, but I went in 2018 and just immediately fell in love with the place. And a little bit sad that I realized they don't have a big mural scene there, but I mean, that was in 2018, but it is changing. They do have a mural festival there, and I made a couple of connections there as well. So trying to make something happen, but Tokyo would be absolute dream. Just the food, the art, the culture, the respect they have for detail and nuance. It's on a bucket list. So if I could do any size mural in Tokyo, it would be amazing. But to do a huge piece would be phenomenal, because I know a few pieces a few years ago. They were putting up these ginormous pieces in business districts, but they were very much meant to be temporary pieces, like up for several weeks and then painted over, because there was a lot of fear around even to put murals in spaces would encourage graffiti. So I think that's changing a little bit. And I know that there's a lot of cafes in Japan and restaurants, more hospitality venues are just starting to get murals. So hopefully that'll start to spread out to the streets as well.
Yep. Well, shout out to anyone in Japan that finally finds this little piece of history that we're putting together here. But look how cool this is. Like, if that isn't something you want as part of your streetscapes, Justine, you're absolutely killing it. You're doing some great work. Scale is incredible. But you still got to, no matter what size it is, and no matter how it comes together, every one of these projects looks incredible that you've done. So inside buildings, outside buildings, on top of, almost on top of buildings. Who knows, a rooftop could be for you next.
I'll do that. I helped out on a ceiling recently. That's the only thing I'd be like, oh, I need a rest from ceilings. But if you got a wall, you know, you can have some art on it. So yeah, thanks for your kind words. I really do love what I do, and I think I can really see myself doing this for a really long time. So hopefully there's still a market and a love for murals, because yeah, it's a real passion of mine.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And it sounds like you've got a bit of a love for fashion as well. So who knows, your art could be part of some fashion pieces in the future. Some yardage prints. I could really see some unbelievable yardage prints. Your use of color, your detail, it deserves to be honored to a lot bigger audience as far as masses. Who knows? Could be jackets, could be shirts, they could be anything. Get it out there, Justine McAllister.
Definitely.
You've been fantastic. So Instagram.com, look up Justine McAllister. That's the first point of reference, but I'm sure there's plenty others that Justine's got. That's a good point of reference for start. And who knows where Justine McAllister will pop up next. But thanks for joining us, Justine, on episode 113 of So What's Been Happening. We could talk for a lot longer about your incredible talents, but that's where we'll leave it for now. And we look forward to having you back with any news you've got in the future talking about your incredible art.
Thank you so much for having me. That time went so fast.
It sure did. It's always the half an hour that ends up being an hour, but thank you so much, and you've been generous with your time.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. How great to have Justine as part of the show. God, what a talent. It really, the one question I had for her was, you know, the scalability of the art and the repeatability of the art. She must find, like, there's nothing that ever looks like it repeats here as far as similar work being done before. So look forward to having a chat to her a little bit later on in her career. Maybe, who knows, could be this year, could be next year, but more than likely next year we talk together with Justine. So look forward to having a chat to her again. So a couple of shows coming up. We've got tomorrow night, Zoe Fox. We're going to have a chat to her with her new lineup again, Zoe Fox and the Rocket Clocks. We've got to be very careful saying that because that's a real tongue twister. We look forward to having a chat to Zoe. We've also then got next week, Jamie Hutchings going to join us. Mark Sinton's going to join us on November the 8th, and Al Carr from Castlemaine. So a few musical artists coming up. Then we're going to slide in some other artists in amongst that. But for now, that was episode 113 of So What's Been Happening. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.